Hi everybody, and welcome back to On Guard Cigar Salon. And I am joined once again with Jim, Race, and we have a new panelist named Graylin. Graylin, who are you?
Well, apparently I'm not legendary.
Well, no, legendary. You're probably more legendary than any of us.
I'm another man who grew up in the Bay Area. Obviously a black leather man, and my perspective may be a little bit different than my friends here, but we'll work on it. I'm also a past title holder, Mr. Drummer, 1993, which makes it last century, so I'm really old.
I'm here too, but I never get recognition.
Oh, and then our producer, and we're new at this. We're actually very surprised that so many people watched our last episode. Did you think that many would?
Shocked. I was absolutely shocked because I watch a lot of videos that only have 1,000 people watch, and they're great.
Yeah. Well, I thought ours was great. Were you surprised?
I was very surprised how many watched.
Yeah.
I watched.
You watched. But now you're a part of it.
And now I'm a part of it.
Yes.
Okay, yay.
Great. So today I want to talk about a topic because I had a boy talking to me about his Grindr hookup taking too long. And I was like, oh, come on. Do you know what we used to have to do to hook up or find anyone in the BDSM community? Do you remember what we had to do? Mm-hmm. And you're Mr. Drummer, so one of the prominent places was Drummer Magazine.
Right.
Classified ads, right?
Yes.
Did you ever do a classified ad?
I never did a classified ad because I didn't have to.
Oh.
I was in the Bay Area, so I just went out.
You just went to the bars?
Yeah.
Did you ever do a classified ad?
I answered some, but I never placed one.
Yeah, I'm the same. I never placed one, but I did answer a couple.
Yeah.
Did you?
I did, but in a different, not in a kink magazine, in an actual newspaper.
Right, because back then, to find another gay human, especially in the smaller communities where they didn't have the gay bars, people put in the newspaper,
right,
gay for gay.
Right, in the Buffalo News, there was an area called the Meeting Place, and it started after like New York Magazine had the classifieds in the back of the magazine, and it got all kind of press. And about 2 years later, they did a men for men and a women for women. And so that was the access that when you're in a smaller city that doesn't have like the notoriety or the number of people like the Bay Area.
Well, so you worked for Drummer Magazine, or did you just go to Brush Creek?
I only worked for Brush Creek, but I hung out in the drummer offices all the time.
So did you ever go through the responses of the mail of people mailing it in?
Okay, see now that's kind of funny because yes, because it was humorous and it was entertainment for us.
Yeah.
Which I'm so sorry that we used to laugh at those ads and all of that, but it's kind of the way it was. We needed entertainment because we only worked for a porn company.
I have a question. We haven't really explained what Drummer Magazine is yet. We've just kind of gone into... Like, I know what Drummer Magazine is because I used to work at Mr. S, and we would literally, like, ship out Drummer Magazine. We had a stockpile of them, but, like, kids these days nowadays definitely don't know what Drummer Magazine is.
Oh, wow.
So Drummer Magazine was probably, this is before online, so it was the only BDSM porn we could actually really go to. It had the stories in it, it had the pictures. It was on that high quality phone book stock paper.
And to place it in time, it started in 1975.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So, long time ago.
And then it also started, which came first, Drummer or IML? Do you know this?
IML.
IML,
came
because
first.
drummer ran for IML the first time.
Wait, yes.
Weren't they merged at one time?
No.
No?
I want to think IML started in 1977.
Oh.
I may be wrong.
We know our facts here. This is the place to come for facts.
But when you say when did it start, do you mean the magazine or the title?
I mean the title system. So, Mr. International Leather started
International Mr. Leather?
Yes. So, Mr. Drummer had its own contest system.
Yes.
Which you are a title holder of.
Yeah.
Yeah, how was that for you?
You know, the funny thing is the man sitting next to me was one of the judges.
Oh, really? I didn't know
Oh,
that.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh, yeah.
I always joke I made him. No,
He
I'm
made
kidding.
me. I wouldn't be the man I am today had it not been for Ray's man.
Put that on the shirt.
But boy, he really did win it. It was an impressive performance.
So, and I got a job at Drummer Magazine in 1992, the year before you won. And so that's how long I've known you.
I know.
You didn't have to say it like that. So I wanted to break down what it used to take to hook up. Now, I remember, because this was the only porn there was no internet. I remember when I turned 20, driving to downtown Phoenix, Arizona, to a dirty bookstore to buy this magazine, being afraid that they're going to recognize me and call my parents. That's how scared I was. And I'd go jack off in my car reading it. And part of what I would jack off to are the classified ads, because it made me feel like there's other men out there that want to do what I want to do. But I want to break down this process of what you had to do to hook up with someone. So this magazine, probably the last half of the magazine was all classified ads, right? So describe what you would have to do to place an ad and then how to respond to it. Do you remember how to do this?
When Drummer first had its ads, they came from the leather fraternity, which was a kind of hookup mechanism prior to Drummer, and so a lot of those ads moved over into Drummer, and they were coded. So you would place an ad with Drummer, let's say in this case, and they would assign a box number, a number to you.
Right, because nobody would put their address or phone number in an ad because you didn't want to be doxxed by the police or the local community you're in.
Everybody used, even outside of Drummer, people would use P.O. boxes because nobody wanted an address and a name associated with it, etc. So you would have a box, and if you saw an ad that you liked, that you wanted to respond to, so you would write a letter and send it to the Drummer office and indicate that it was this ad by the box number that you were interested in. And they would then do the forwarding of your letter to the person who placed the ad.
So this is already taking a full week waiting for the mail system
at least
to deliver it to...
The whole process, I did it a number of times, was about 6 weeks.
Yeah, for a hookup.
Yeah, for a hookup.
For a hookup.
None of this.
But I don't want it now.
But the thing is, in race, you weren't sure if the other person was going to respond. So think about that. You know, you placed this ad, you sent it in, you hoped that the magazine
because you could hang for weeks. What if they didn't like you? They're not writing back.
Right. So, 6 weeks passed by and you rejected.
Okay, so can I also point out, none of these have a picture.
Right.
So you don't know what the person looks like you're writing. So it merely had to be the description that they wrote. And each one of these ads cost kind of like a lot of money, depending on words, how many words you used.
Yeah, it was usually by word count.
So there were a lot of abbreviations that, as a newbie, I had no idea what CBT, TT, all these things meant. That was just general vernacular for how you hook up.
Wait, I have a question. Were those highlighted people, specifics?
Oh, I highlighted them because we're going to get to that.
Oh, okay. I want a dramatic reading.
We're doing a dramatic reading.
Okay, great.
But I just want to say, so now, if you think about it, a 30-year-old right now, when did Grindr come out on the iPhone? 2013?
When did iPhones come out?
2013, 2014? So, as an adult, they have been able to hook up online fairly quickly with pictures, like cock shocks, everything, and get instant, yes, producer.
This it came out in 2009, 12 years ago.
Oh, okay.
12 years ago.
Wow.
So that means a 32-year-old has had this all their life.
Yeah.
Now,
Now, does that make you feel old or what?
I was already feeling old.
Well, like Graylin, you were saying you were here in the Bay Area. When I lived in New York in the mid-'70s, you just go out and do whatever. When I moved back to Buffalo, You're right. We had to go to. There was only one porn shop that carried gay magazines, even though there were other ones. And actually, we started learning those codes: CBT, TT, and
Where did you learn it?
out of Drummer Magazine.
Drummer Magazine.
And you know, even though in the city we might have played or whatever, I don't think we used that vernacular. And all of a sudden, because of personal ads, that became kind of our shorthand.
Yeah.
That's how we started talking in bars and everything else.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, even talking about the magazine that you're holding right now, growing up in the Bay Area, we knew most of those people. In fact, the two people on the cover there, I know well or knew well, and one of them I knew better than the other. So for us, we could just go out there and meet those people or talk to those people.
Well, you were very, very lucky.
Connected.
You were Mr. Drummer. Everyone wanted you.
Well, I also think
We hear you loud and clear, Raylan.
No, the people who wanted black men wanted.
Oh, sure. So how was that? How was that going through the classifieds?
You know,
because one of the things I noticed in here, rereading them because it's been a while, is there was no Fats Femmes, no Asians. They were very clear about ruling people out up front.
Mm-hmm.
How's that changed today, or do you think it has?
So, I mean, I brought a magazine with me.
Let's see this. Now, you know, while you're doing...
Oh, well, I was going to say, while he's doing that, like, no Faps, no Femmes, no Asians, like, that's been a big thing recently, but only because the Drag Race queens have been very adamant about it. Like, they've done music videos, they've done ad campaigns, like, it's only been recently that even, like, I think Grindr has even done stuff that's, like, that's really inappropriate, you know? They do, like, PSAs and videos against that kind of stuff.
Well, you know, Graylin, I had a good friend of mine back in the 70s, black gay guy, who always said to me, you know, I am a gay black man, not a black gay man, because I identify more with the gay community the way that I am now. And is that how you felt because you just mentioned only people who wanted black guys, you know, wanted me?
See, I was the opposite. I identified as black first and then gay.
Interesting.
Because I was born black and knew black early on because I grew up in the Bay Area. Gay to me wasn't a big deal, again, because I grew up in the Bay Area. So that wasn't even something that I thought about. I thought about being black, not much about being gay. But even like in this magazine that I have, which is called Gay Black Men.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what GBM stands for?
Yes. Oh, you didn't know? You work
I
with
don't know
us.
Hey, I've never heard that acronym.
Really?
At my age?
No.
GBM, I've never heard that acronym.
Oh, they used to have in their GBM, just like MWM or
Yeah.
Gay
GWM.
White Male. Yeah,
That was really
GWM.
common.
I know LOL. I know.
Interesting.
I know BBC. You know, the British Broadcasting.
Yeah, see, we had Gay Black Men, and so the ads in here are mostly ads placed by white men looking for black men, and rarely the other way around.
Really?
Yes. And so most of the black men that I knew didn't want to answer these because they were white men looking for black men specifically.
Oh, interesting.
And it was the fetishization that they were looking for.
And you know, and there were clubs like Black White Men Together, which to us meant these are only white men who want to fetishize us.
Right.
And if we weren't black, they would want nothing to do with us.
Awful. Was that a local distribution or did that go national?
Oh, no, this is national. This was put out by,
national?
can we say who put this out?
Yeah.
Okay, this was a Brush Creek Media magazine.
Oh,
and
okay.
In fact, I was brought onto Brush Creek Media specifically to be the editor of this magazine.
Oh, wow.
You guys all talk about it, and you seem to know what Brush Creek Media is. I have no idea.
Oh, they did great videos. Great.
Yes,
videos.
because our video producer is right there. Well, he's the director.
I directed all of their Brush Creek
They
videos
were
because
good.
Graylin was my boss. He produced them.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, I think in that magazine you have one of the. What was the name of the movie that? Okay.
Can we show this?
And I have
Make
a
sure it's
story.
okay.
There's no
porn, right?
There's no penis on the back of this.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
I mean, I can blur it out later, I guess, but...
This movie, I remember Gamma Beta Mu. You show that camera.
Oh, that's a butt.
Yeah, that's a lot of butt.
There's a lot of butt.
Can you put a little furry thing on it?
Oh yeah, no, I'll blur it just for you. I'll blur it just for you, Graylin.
So this was a. Did we shoot this at the Black House?
We shot it at the Black House.
Was that the Black Sex Club in Castro?
There used to be a sex club called the Black House, and we shot a black movie in the Black House. And what I'll never forget is we were doing an orgy. I remember two things from that day. We were doing an orgy scene, and right in the middle, you stopped, and literally, what did you feed them? You started.
I wanted black food for the black cast. And part of black food, I think we had ribs and some chicken and some baked
Black-eyed peas. No.
beans.
Oh,
so
funny.
he started serving the entire cast baked beans, chicken before the orgy.
No!
I was doing lights with my camera operator. I come in and everyone is just chowing down. And I'm like, oh, no.
Have you ever bottomed before?
That is a riot.
But you know, I wasn't in the movie. So and I wanted beans.
I was going to murder you that day.
Oh, I remember that very well because you were like, you can't serve beans. You can't serve and you were taking food away from black people.
I'm the one white guy in the Black House.
You can't.
Taking away their food.
That is a riot. Well, we got to tell people the reason why it was the Black House. It was a house on Castro that everything was painted black. Right. It was the only one that had the outdoor in the back because it had a backyard. So it had those little kind of porches, but everything inside was painted
and that's
black.
where we would shoot. Now, the second thing is not sexual, but what I remember is getting a call, loading up the back of my truck with the equipment. Princess Di died that day. And I just being devastated.
Yes.
And it was just, so I'll always remember that shoot. Thank you.
And thank you for ruining that day.
It's so funny.
So now the other thing that this jogged my memory about is photography was not as easy as well. None of these people had pictures, right? But when you responded to an ad, you sent a photo of yourself and why you wanted to be with this person, and you mailed it. But do you remember what you would have to do to get a picture of yourself nude? You would have to take a picture, not know how it turned out, take it to a store and develop it, come back 3 days later, get the prints, hope that Kodak didn't look at them and be terrified, and then send them in. Also, when we did these magazines, it wasn't digital. How did we used to have to print these things? We would have to take pictures. We'd have to cut, sometimes with rubber cement and text and paste and take a print of it.
And I know a lot of gay men who knew specific photo developers that you could go to, and they would do nudes, even sexual if you wanted, but at least you felt safe that they could do it. But I had at least 3 rolls from a developer just disappear because they never processed them, and I'm sure it's because there were nudes on them.
Yeah.
Well, if you remember, the camera shop on the corner of 18th and Castro was one of the only camera shops that you could go to and have your pictures printed. However, we all suspected that they made copies for themselves.
I would if I worked there.
This is part of it. It's like, okay, here's my film. You can have yours. I'll get mine.
But could you imagine living in a smaller community like you did, and not knowing whether it's okay to do that or not?
Well, you couldn't do it. You just did Polaroids, because you're right.
Polaroids. You remember Polaroids?
I love Polaroids.
Grace, you were lucky because I didn't have this happen to me, but people saying, oh my God, I got contacted that it was pornography because I had a nude in a smaller city. So people had a hard time.
They really did. I was in Chicago, and we had a particular developer that everyone went to, a gay guy who worked in a camera shop. And that's where we got everything developed. Or we used Polaroids.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because of the magazines. I'm not online, as you all know, I still get a hard copy of The Advocate. And, when it's mailed to me, it has white paper covering it in the mail so that people don't see it's The Advocate still. To this
Still
day. Today. It comes in the old brown paper package. because of the mail in smaller markets. In San Francisco, it wouldn't be a problem. In New York, it wouldn't. But these people, that's their only touchstone, are getting it, and it's still coming in a brown paper bag.
And I don't think most people, younger people today, realize that when we had something developed or any kind of nude, it was going to be labeled pornography by a lot of people. We were nervous all the time. So we always had to be very, very careful about sharing the photo. Where were we mailing it? Are we mailing it somewhere where we're sure it's going to go to the right place and not be a police officer or something like that?
Well, just think, in 1975, John Lennon was deported from the United States for line drawings of nudes.
Well, speaking from a young person, I remember the first book I bought at probably about 16 in a, what was it called? Not Barnes & Noble, but Borders. Back when they had Borders. It was
Back in the day, it was
But Borders
Closed? I thought it was still there.
The Borders I went to has since closed. It was at a big mall. I don't know how malls incorporate it into the kids' culture anymore, but we used to hang out at the malls. And I bought it was a gay magazine. It was called Wink, WINQ. And I remember buying it with my gay my girlfriend, and she looked at it. She's like, "Oh, so risque." It had this little twink on the front and long stockings. You could kind of see the curve of his butt. But even then, it was in the weirdest part of the bookstore. Yeah. It was clearly kind of hidden off to the side. And I remember buying it and just being so nervous because the attendant was this older woman, and she was just kind of looking at me, and I remember reading it, and I still have it. It's somewhere upstairs, but it's the only time I ever bought a periodical, a gay periodical. Yep.
Yeah, you had to go to porn stores to get anything. Even The Advocate, which is pretty political, it's not that sexual, still was not in a regular newsstand.
There were a lot of newsstands that would tuck adult stuff away in a particular corner. The Playboy, which was acceptable,
right?
But then there was the gay stuff kind of tucked behind it.
Because remember, those had plastic things that you only saw was the title Playboy. You couldn't see the cover.
Yep.
So they would actually cover it up, even if there wasn't anybody naked on it. That's how provincial the United States is.
But even here in San Francisco, just walking down Castro or Polk Street, which was even better than Castro back in the day, you had all the magazines right in the window. Yeah. And the porn covers right in the window. Everything was there. So we could see everything.
Yeah, I remember that from Polk before everybody went. Well, I went on vacation to Rio, and one of the things that amazed me there is, the sidewalk newsstands all had gay, straight, just hanging right out. Back in the 70s, absolutely no problem. You could go up and buy whatever. And then coming back to the United States, and here's everything still in a porn shop in a brown wrapper.
We're talking about drummer ads, and I think the experience for those of us that were in urban, dense, highly gay, with a leather community environment, we didn't use the ads necessarily as much because we could go to the bar.
Exactly.
But imagine you're in a small town. Those are the people who really, really needed those ads. It was their only connection to anyone.
It was.
So I'll just go through here because they're listed by state. So I can read Indiana, 3 ads, Iowa, 1 ad, Kansas, 1 ad, Kentucky, 7 ads, Louisiana, 1 ad, Maryland, 2, Massachusetts, 10.
Massachusetts?
New York is a whole page.
But probably New York or downstate, not upstate.
Now, the other thing about these ads is they're oddly very specific to fetish. So this was the place, because if you went to a bar, unless they're flagging what they're into, you don't know what they're into, right? Oh. So this was the place where you could go if you're into a very specific thing, race, type of person. This is how you would find it.
Back then, because I was a very young leather boy, in the 20s and in my 20s and stuff. But the older leather men, the Alan Selbys and Philip Turner and those guys, your whatever color you wore actually had to coincide with your fetish. So if you had, piping wasn't invented yet, but if you had on socks was a big thing to Philip Turner. Right. So if you had on what we called Daisy Dukes, but were the not that I wore those every Sunday, but
they got on.
I would need a photo of that.
If you had on shorts and boots, which you had to have on because Alan Selby would not let you ever go any place without boots.
You need to explain who Philip Turner and Alan Selby is.
Yeah.
Okay, Alan Selby was the original Mr.
Mr.
S.
S.
That's what the S is
and
from
he
Mr.
was
S.
he was at everything.
Yes.
And very friendly, and was actually my very first guide. And I can tell you how that happened later. But Philip was so in tune to socks that your socks had to be your fetish.
So, and Alan Selby wouldn't let you wear tennis shoes in it.
Yeah, Alan Selby, you could not wear tennis shoes at all. And if he saw you in tennis shoes, you know the little the black stripe around the bottom of the tennis shoes that they had back in the day?
Yeah.
He would make you marker out your tennis shoes.
Oh.
So if
so-
you were in the Eagle, you had to marker out the whole thing.
So, like at the door, you would have to do
Oh
that?
yeah, as soon as he saw you, and he would say things like, "I can't believe it, dear. Have you ever seen such a thing?" That was his phrase.
So, do you remember they had a ton of restrictions at the door of like the Eagle and
Oh yeah,
other
I
thing?
loved it.
Like, you couldn't wear cologne.
Right?
Actually, deodorant was even frowned upon. Right? Can you imagine trying to do that today?
You couldn't even do that at Blow Buddies. Blow Buddies
Didn't allow cologne. They
or
used
any
to.
of that stuff.
And in New York, they actually had a sign at one of the bars because it was trendy at the time. No patchouli.
Oh, when everybody
Oh,
wore patchouli.
patchouli.
Everybody
Oh,
wore
the
Oh
worst.
yeah, patchouli.
But this is how much things have changed because I am very excited to announce we have our first paying sponsor for our show.
Is it patchouli?
No, it's not. It's the opposite of patchouli. It is Leather Daddy Skin Company. They contacted us, and I have actually been using this for over a year. They're a startup. They're an amazing company. And actually, I'm going to make you smell this.
Smell it live on
Smell
camera.
it live on camera.
4K.
I'll hold your cigar.
I
Okay.
never, ever do cologne. And this thing really goes
Do you
really
just
well.
pull
with
it or you-
pull it, yeah.
Oh, that's not bad.
It's
I
not.
was so ready to hate it. I was going to
I told
hate
you.
it.
Me too.
So, Leather Daddy Skin Company is a plant-based skincare line with a kinky twist. Leather, scotch, vanilla, and 18 erotic spices are bound to get the blood flowing, getting you ready to dominate your day. We will put the link down below. If you go to leatherdaddyskinco.com and use offer code ONGUARD, you get 10% off your first order. Thank you, Leather Daddy.
Oh
And I
yeah.
love that they're plant-based because I eat plant-based. So.
Right.
So you could eat all of
I
it.
could eat.
I don't know if that is what you should be doing, but yeah, no, their shampoo and beard oil is amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
But I have
okay.
black beard and it's different.
It actually works. He
It
has
works in
like
black
3
beard. Do you
different.
have black friends to try that on?
You're my only black friend, Graylin.
That's what, and I better be. Because if you have another, anyway,
No, but honestly, it smells
it smells like leather.
like leather. And if I was going to like hug somebody and they were wearing that, I would be turned on because
Me too.
it's
I'd be
leather.
okay. Yeah.
But they should have one. What I was gonna say, they should have one that smells like cum. Can you say cum?
I mean, you can. Yeah, you can.
Did you ever notice that brie cheese tastes like cum?
Brie cheese.
Maybe that's an episode for another time. Back to the hanky code, getting into bars. Like there were apparently hanky codes for the hanky codes.
So the leather daddies who all stood up at the top of the Eagle, we had to report to them. So Philip Turner, who was one of the leather daddies, would require you to have your socks 2 fingers above the top of your boot.
Oh,
and
I like
the
that.
color of the sock had to match your kink. So if you were a fister, you had to have red. If you were in the piss, you had to have yellow. And they would never let you switch it because it was the hanky code.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
And then when the piping came out, and we were all excited about piping, the piping also had to match your kink. So if you were fister, everything had to be red. Even your t-shirt. Your t-shirts had to match your kink.
And now those have gone out the window. With
Well-
the sportswear and fetish
Yeah,
and
and that's
everything.
confusing because I look
Are
at
you confused? Are
I
you
look
so
at boys and they have
confused?
on
Oh, God.
yellow or orange, especially with orange, and I think you're into everything anytime. Because you have on an orange hanky, an orange jockstrap, an orange collar, which I can't understand how you have on an orange collar.
So the kink has changed. Fashion has changed.
Yes.
No, it hasn't.
That brings us to how people connect today.
Yes.
How do you think apps and the connections now people have are affecting us? We don't have a lot of those mentors that handhold us anymore.
We don't, and I think the bars have become social venues, not cruising venues, at least for the most part.
Right.
So that's the number one thing I've noticed is I get most of my hookups now through Recon. Because to me it's like a menu. I can see what they've done with their pictures. I can see who they know, who their friends are. That gives me a lot of insight into who they are. And then I go to the bars just to socialize. I rarely hook up at a bar.
And I think locally, I know this for a fact since I've done it myself. You go to a bar, you socialize, you go home, and you go online and you hook up. And sometimes I will hook up with somebody I was just talking to at the bar, but now we're connecting.
So now, what apps do you use?
I use Scruff. I use Recon mostly. And those are really the two main ones I use.
And how successful are you with them?
Scruff is a more immediate thing. And I really like it when I travel because it's GPS based and I know that somebody's in the same hotel or down the street from me. So I like that. Recon tends to be not an immediate hookup thing. I will communicate with them, we talk, I find out their kinks, we'll make a plan, but it's not an immediate hookup kind of thing. At least I don't find it that way.
What do you use, Graylin?
I use Recon and Scruff. However, I have to say that, especially with Scruff, being black on there, just like those personal ads, I get hit up by the people who are looking for black men specifically.
Yeah, I saw a couple of those in here. White slave looking for a black master.
Yeah, and the same, it happens on Scruff
reverse,
also.
Well, because I'm not on any of it. I'm really not. But, one of the interesting things to me when I hear this is that when you used to hook up in the bar, that's how you expanded your world. When it's like even this is putting us kind of like we're in the news bubble. Like we only go to, really liberal, democratic sites and that's all you get all the time. When you used to hook up in the bar, you met somebody, they were hot, you went home, you never knew what you were going to get. So you might learn, you might not like it, but you might love it. And it was a way to really expand within the community what you know and what you do.
I actually like the lack of specificity when
There's a word.
Isn't that a word? I like saying that word. Specificity. I practice that one. I liked the discovery. I sometimes don't like the fact that there's a menu.
Yeah, you know what you're getting.
That I know exactly what I kind of like the discovery part. So there's a pro and a con to that.
Yeah.
But you know what's missing? So, back in the day, we reported to the leather daddies, and it was a rule, and a strict rule, that if we were talking to someone in the bar, the leather daddies had to know them. And they not only had to know them, we had to tell them where we were going and who it was with, and they had veto power. So at any point, Alan Selby could look at me and say, "Oh no, dear, you're not going home with him," and it was strict.
Now that's kind of interesting because it's kind of like the drag world, with the drag houses and people staying together. Was there a parallel there, do you think?
We didn't know drag houses.
No. Oh, they did in New York.
But I know what you're saying.
Explain drag houses.
Well, I had a good friend who was a drag queen, and they had a drag mother. I think that's on RuPaul's Drag Race, isn't it? But it was similar in that they socialized together.
Did you just ask me if that was that?
But that's how, because a good friend of mine, my roommate was a drag queen, and that's how the drag mother was in their drag house. And, they were it was a little bit militaristic in some ways, like you're saying.
I think there's a very strong parallel between that and somebody like an Alan Selby or any leather daddy or person who would kind of guide newcomers or younger people. So I think there is a parallel. Yeah. And they often had their own family of people that they would watch out for and guide and help and make sure that they don't go home with the wrong person.
Right. And equate Alan Selby to RuPaul.
No.
No.
No, we did not.
I just make sure.
And we never will.
It was also the way that they used to control bad tricks, was you were all connected, and if somebody was really known as a bad trick, because the same fetishization happened with the drag world, and this friend of mine would say, you don't want to go home with a bad trick, and we keep that within our, we know what's going on, and it's verbal, where we really communicate with one another, and there was a protective mechanism.
The leather scene had a blacklist.
Yeah.
Definitely.
to use it.
I know. Yes. And we know people who were on, at least I'm sure I could name some people that you would know who were on it.
Oh, yeah.
And it was actually a little bit kind of fun to be in the bar talking to at least one specific person who I have in mind and see what the other leather daddies were going to do. So, you could go over there and talk. And do you remember Irwin Kane?
Oh,
Daddy Irwin.
Daddy Irwin. I remember very specifically being at the Eagle, talking to one person, and Ray Tilton coming up and tapping me on the shoulder and saying, Daddy Irwin wants you. And me getting up, going to the stage at the Eagle, and Daddy Irwin saying, sit. And I had to sit there just because I had been talking to this guy. And I did. I sat there for the whole time.
This was like putting you in the corner?
Oh, yeah,
Did you have
absolutely.
to put your nose in the...
No, but everyone knew I was there. So, I'm sitting there as everyone else is kissing and fucking in the bar because you could do that then.
Daddy Irwin used to run the piercing right across from your apartment.
Yeah.
That piercing, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
I think it's important to point out that we did watch out for each other.
Yeah.
With that, I was in Denver teaching a class, and I was giving an example of there's somebody in San Francisco that we just tell people not to play with. And I'm not going to name a name, but we just tell people not to play with them. And somebody in the class raised their hand and said, would that be so-and-so? In Denver.
Oh, no.
they knew who this person was because this kind of network of you just don't play with those kinds of
So I feel like that
people.
still happens to a degree.
It does,
today.
it does.
But
we
on
do
the
have a
apps-
close-knit... Pardon?
But if you're on an app,
You don't know.
I could hook up with anybody on an app. I'm not going to I might call race.
Right.
And say, do you know this guy? But for,
But how many times have you hooked up with someone on an app and then you told someone who it was and they were like, oh, why'd you do that?
That's happened recently.
I bet.
Okay, we have to talk about that.
That's for off camera. That'll be good
yeah.
after.
But this is also something that I'm curious about because when I answered ads in Drummer or Classifieds, because it took so much effort to do and so much time to set up, even if the scene wasn't great or the hookup wasn't great, I remained friends with them after. Do you think that still occurs in this day of instant gratification?
I think it does. I mean, I've certainly hooked up with people through, online mechanisms, and it's been, good, not necessarily, fireworks.
Right.
But I've remained friends with them, and they're nice people. It just happened not to be a perfectly synced sexual thing. But
Okay.
yeah, I think it happens now.
Well, I can remember back in the day hooking up and people being kind of comfortable with saying, this just really isn't working.
Yeah.
Because you knew them from the bar or you knew somebody who did, and it was really kind of comfortable. And since I'm not on the apps, I don't know if that happens. Like if
I went home with someone, and back in the day, I pretty much functioned as a top and a dom. Went home with this guy. We really liked each other, had great conversations. He was really into opera. I wasn't, but it was a big topic in the leather bars at the time.
Yeah.
And we had this great conversation. We went home and then we realized, we're both tops.
Mm.
And we just,
Yeah.
I think we watched a movie or something.
Yeah.
I forget what we did. But we just hung out.
So another thing I was thinking about is how often, so I find it less and less now through the apps, I find that pictures generally match what they look like in person now. Whereas back in Grayland's day,
Which is also your
rarely,
day.
they would have a picture and rarely did they look like that. And I have a theory on that one. It's because it took so much time to develop films. They kept that one picture where they look good for 10 years because it took too much to develop a new one. Or I think as you get older, you kind of feel like you still look like you used to.
But that's
or
a good
time goes
theory.
right faster.
it is, but once at Smokeout, we were sitting at the pool, me and you, and I was talking to this guy, asked how old I was, and he goes, "Oh, your internet age is 55."
internet age.
Then we used to call that AOL age. Like
AOL
inches.
inches?
Yes.
Remember AOL inches?
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
oh,
the
yeah. I still
AOL
have
boards,
AOL,
yeah.
by
You
the
know,
way.
are you really that big, or is it AOL?
Yeah.
Why still at AOL?
But you know, Race, you brought up something really interesting to me because this happened recently with the little fucker that I've collared. You know, he can I say fucker?
Yes.
He must be so proud.
And
No,
think
that's
their
his
real
name.
Yeah.
Like we have Pig.
Little Fucker
He
is his
decided
name?
he was Little Fucker because he doesn't fit any other of the moles, and he really is a little fucker.
That's
However,
okay. I call him Cigar Pig, so
yeah,
it's
so
fine.
it's perfect. But what I find online, so for instance, you know, he's talking to some guy, and the guy's name is something Top Daddy, right?
Mhm.
And so he's talking to this guy, and then the guy sort of assumes that he's actually his top daddy. And I had to explain to people, it's like, oh, no. This is fantasy. He's mine. I'm just letting you have a good time with him. But then you're going home, and I'm still the top. So I find that people get a little confused when they're online.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I found the very first ad that was in issue #1 of Drummer.
Okay.
And it was from Alabama because it was alphabetical, right? So
Right.
that was the very
So
first
this is
one.
the very first ad.
And by the way,
And what year are we talking?
I assume this is 1975, I think.
Okay.
So it would be the first issue.
Wow.
And eventually, they, just so everyone has some context, they went from state by state, and then eventually had a nationwide, and the nationwide category kept growing and growing and growing.
Really?
And my theory is that that's because people started to travel more,
Yeah.
events and contests and things like that, whereas once upon a time they didn't. So this is the very first ad. It's Fort Payne, M, Pisces. Every ad
Oh,
had
yeah.
astrological sign.
Yes,
Oh,
that
Every
was a
ad.
huge thing.
Well, in the 70s, the song Aquarius,
Yep.
everybody was just looking like that was the new. Remember that?
Hair!
Hair, exactly. Hair brought it out, the song
Back to
Aquarius.
being show queens, are we?
Well, we are
First
gay.
nude-
Come on.
The first Broadway nude, yes.
No, Fort Payne, M, Pisces, 5'7", 125, white, 6 inches, knowledgeable, unusual, slow pain experiments, no booze, drugs, box, and then the box number.
Love it.
Wait, no booze and just drugs? Or no drugs?
No drugs.
The way
No
it's-
booze, just drugs.
the way it's written is no booze or
Slash
comma,
drugs.
Drugs, got it.
But
Okay.
but I think that's important because there's an assumption that the not playing under the influence is a more current thing, and that's not true. Back in the day,
Oh, absolutely. A lot of
Safe,
people
sane,
wouldn't go home.
consensual.
it was
Well, you remember people who were really drunk, nobody would go home with
Right.
because you knew it was disaster.
well, and not if it was
Braylon
going to
wasn't so bad.
be BDSM especially.
yeah.
And if you didn't know them and they were under the influence, you said, maybe I'm not going to go there. You might go fucking suck, but you
Can I
want-
say something? Do you remember when we used to have cards printed up?
Oh, yeah.
That's somebody you'd give your card
Oh,
to.
my God.
Do you remember?
Remember the
we had
rating
our
system
cards
on the cards?
Yes.
Is it rating
There was a
system? I
rating
never saw
system.
that.
Oh yeah. Yes.
If someone gave you, if you gave me your card,
Uh-huh.
usually at the bottom, there were some numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and then you could circle one so that when I got home, I could look at it and go, "Oh, here's a 5."
Right.
They had that already printed up for you?
Yeah, the bars would actually have
Oh, the
the cards.
bars
So
did.
that's
Right, but-
where you could scribble a name and number, but you could also
So helpful.
You can
Oh, they
circle.
all had cards with their logo on the front. And then, you know, you had your address book and you used to staple people's cards in under the alphabet. And you'd look through your address book if you had a slow night.
The other thing that people used to do is if they didn't have cards in the bar is matchbooks.
yeah, the
Matchbook.
And so I had a roommate once, and I walked into his room, and his dresser had a mountain of matchbooks, and it was all names and addresses from bars.
Isn't that funny? There was a friend of mine, we were at a party, and he said, "Oh, God, your house is beautiful. Oh, this stuff is gorgeous. What's the most valuable thing you have in here?" And he goes, "My address book."
Well, I have a question though, Race. Okay, so there was one ad from Alabama, right? So does that mean if you're in Alabama, you're kind of stuck with that guy.
Yeah. Is there no one else in Alabama?
God, I got this guy.
Well, that's my point. Was when these millennials are complaining about the instant gratification taking too long of their scruff, and like, there's
There's
only
like
one guy.
being on scruff in the state.
I remember even in Los Angeles in the early 80s, if you wanted rope bondage, there was one guy you really went to. That was it. Now it's a very common skill.
Well, you know what I wonder about that, though? Now, if you hook up immediately, and I guess that's what people do with these apps. Back then, I mean, you really had to get to know and try with people, too, because it took so much to finally meet them that you thought, well, maybe there is some
I'm going to see
common
this
ground.
through. There's a lot of work to get here.
I think back in the day, you were more likely to come to some common ground with somebody rather than say, "Oh, you're not into X, Y, or Z."
Writing them off.
Yeah,
because
writing
their
off.
nipples are too big.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your dick is too big.
Nobody's ever said that. Yes.
Well,
I do have an ad I want to read because it's from GBM magazine. This one says Love 69.
Oh.
Like, who cares? Everyone's 69.
This is your internal voice.
Oh,
when you're reading
okay.
it.
Yeah.
Give us how you think it would be characterized.
Let's
by
do
the
your
person.
dramatic
Your
reading.
dramatic reading.
Love 69. White male seeking black male studs in Southeast Bay, but all okay. I'm in my 50s, 5'8", 155 pounds, educated, slender, HIV negative, love 69 and being bottom with condom. Please, no BS, can travel.
So hot. So hot.
So hot.
I mean, and the reason I read that is because if you were to put that in scruff now,
Yeah.
no one would want any of that.
no.
And what's the educated part for?
I know. What is that about?
To make you think he's not stupid. I don't know. Because, who wants educated? It's like,
No one.
but can you fuck?
Well, himbos weren't a thing back then. Himbos weren't a thing.
No.
And, just one quick thing, because our host asked me to bring this.
Yes.
So, Drummer Magazine. I'm on the
who
cover.
is that hot man on the cover?
I don't know. It's
Oh
the
my
only
God.
black man to ever be on the cover of Drummer Magazine. That's
Ever?
who it is. Yes, it
Ever?
is.
And there's
Yes,
your
it
name.
is.
You're
Yes.
kidding me.
No, it's not a joke.
Show it
The
to
only
the that camera.
Only black man to ever be on the cover of Drummer Magazine. But the reason I'm saying that is because it was a requirement as Mr. Drummer to not only be on the cover of the magazine, but we had to do a centerfold. So during my interview, the panel asked me if I had any problems with nudity. And the person who asked me was Michael Bales. We know him, don't we?
Oh, we do.
And Michael Bales asked me, do you have any problem with nudity? So I took off all my clothes in the interview just to show them I had no problem with the nudity. But
Not just because you're a hoe.
And I was one of the judges, and trust me, that made an impression.
I bet it
And let me say that Graylin, along with people like Brian Dawson and a few others, were, in my opinion, some of the great Mr. Drummers.
Yeah.
They not only won the title, but they kept going with the community. They actually kept giving back. They didn't just win the title and drop out after the year. So props to you.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Props to you for picking me.
And actually, props to all of you, because I'm going to call time on this one. We've gone off on all sorts of different tangents. Thank you, Alan Selby. But thank you, Graylin. Thank you, Race. Thank you, Cigar Pig. That's what I'm calling you now. This has been really good, and I think it's something that lots of people coming up, I hope millennials and Generation Z see what we went through to have to hook up. Anything else you want to add?
Make it short.
Make it short. The producer is out of time. But I want to thank our new sponsor, Leather Daddy Skincare, for sponsoring us. Also, we did just start a new merch line of t-shirts. So if you go to OnGuardGear.com, you can get new t-shirts.
I'm not going to mention the t-shirt that you've not done yet, but
Yours,
It'll
the
get
drummer
It will be
T-shirt.
there.
Okay. What's the other stuff? I mean, you only let us smell the cologne. What's
Oh,
this other stuff?
wait. This is body wash, lotion. Actually, this lotion you can put on. It feels really good. So enjoy. But thank you for joining us. If you want to find us, our socials are listed down below.
Wow.
Except the pig has no socials.
No socials.
And Graylin just started his own Twitter account for the first time. How's that going, Graylin?
I twittered once.
You twittered?
And I just want to follow people. I'm kind of surprised there's so much nudity. It's weird seeing your friends have sex.
Yeah. You know, the funny thing about this is I replayed a Leatherman's discussion panel that you were on, whether leather titles were important anymore. And this was 5 years ago. And I kind of went through it, like I scanned it. The one clip that I landed on was you literally yelling at the camera going, if you're going to be doing a title, know how to do social media. And I'm like, this bitch has no social media.
It was only AOL then.
That's 5 years ago. So welcome. You can now see Graylin on Twitter. But anyway, thank you guys for joining us. If you want to suggest topics for us to talk about in the future, leave them in the comments below. If you want to be notified, hopefully YouTube will notify you if you ring that bell. And please subscribe to this channel and tell your friends. Anyway, thanks for joining us, and thank you guys. It's been insightful as always.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.